Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to this month's webinar, Set Yourself Up for Success with Peer-to-Peer Fundraising. My name is Tony Bell, and I'm a trainer for the Sanford Institute of Philanthropy. I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, a couple of notes. This webinar will be conversational with the opportunity to ask questions during the webinar, as well as a Q&A following the presentation. Please submit any questions you have in the chat box using your GoToWebinar control panel. In the days following the webinar, you will receive an email with the slide deck and recording to review again at your leisure. You've got a cause, learn how to fund it. At the Sanford Institute of Philanthropy, our mission is to significantly increase your fundraising capabilities and the impact you have on communities and society through a proven contemporary curriculum presented by world-class nonprofit leaders, best-in-class faculty, and renowned philanthropists. We want to recognize our important affiliate partners who provide training and education to fundraisers nationally. Check out the map to find an institute in your community. If you're on social media, and who isn't, please give us a shout out using the hashtag #SIPWebinar and tag us. Now I'm pleased to introduce today's presenter, Ms. Elizabeth Hilbert, Product Marketing Manager at Classy.org. Classy.org is an online and mobile fundraising platform for nonprofits based in San Diego, California. Previously, Elizabeth was a customer success manager at Classy, working directly with clients on fundraising campaigns ranging from small e-appeals to major peer-to-peer fundraisers with thousands of participants. Prior to joining Classy, Elizabeth worked in campaign consulting, helping political candidates and nonprofit organizations fine-tune their fundraising, digital communications, and field strategy. Once again, we're pleased to welcome today Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today and have the opportunity to speak to all of you about setting yourself up for success with peer-to-peer fundraising. So let's go ahead and get started with our objectives. So what are we hoping that you're going to get out of this session? First, we'll give an overview of what peer-to-peer fundraising is. And then we'll take a look at some of the data around peer-to-peer fundraising that shows why this type of fundraising can be so valuable. We'll also go through an overview of the many different types of peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns that we see organizations running over here at Classy. Now, this is all with the goal of helping you imagine what a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign could look like at your organization. And from there, we'll talk about the steps that any organization can take to launch a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, whether that's for the first time or whether you're already a peer-to-peer pro. So to help us understand better where you're coming from, we're going to get things started with a poll. We want to understand your familiarity with this type of fundraising. So does your organization currently have a peer-to-peer fundraising program? Yes, we have a well-established program. We've tried it before. No, but we want to try it out. Not too familiar with peer-to-peer, or something else. And please tell us in the chat what that is.
Please submit any other in the chat box so we can take a look at your current peer-to-peer fundraising program status. We have about 10 more seconds and then we will close the poll.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much for responding. It looks like we have a lot of folks who haven't tried peer-to-peer before, but are excited to try it out. So we hope today you'll be armed with some of those ideas and tools that you can take forward and launch some of these campaigns at your organization. So for those of you who responded that they weren't familiar with peer-to-peer fundraising, we're going to start by giving an overview of what is peer-to-peer fundraising anyway. So peer-to-peer fundraising is a type of online fundraising, and it's unique in the sense that you're not actually asking your supporters to themselves make a gift, but instead you're asking them to set up a personalized fundraising page. Essentially, this is their own personalized online campaign branded on behalf of your organization that they're running on behalf of your organization. But your team isn't making the ask. They are soliciting gifts on your behalf from their friends, from their family, and from their larger network of contacts. Now, of course, a donor can make a gift directly to the campaign or directly to their own fundraising page, but the primary ask is not for them to donate their money, but to donate their time in asking for the support of their networks. So the personal, direct nature of peer-to-peer fundraising is one of the reasons why we see this type of fundraising as so valuable. Instead of receiving an email or a direct mail ask from a faceless organization, potential donors are being reached out to by their friends and their family who personally explain why this cause is so important to them and make that personal ask for their support. And this extends online as well. So when a supporter creates a fundraising page on behalf of your organization, and you can see on your screen a fundraising page that I myself created on behalf of an amazing organization called Days for Girls, peer-to-peer campaigns have a lot of traffic coming from social media and from mobile devices because people are sharing these campaigns. In addition, we tend to see a higher donation conversion rate for peer-to-peer campaigns than we do on other types of campaigns at Classy. And again, this underscores the power of your supporters making that direct personal ask for support. So we wanted to quickly run through some other platform statistics that we found over at Classy that underscore why we're so excited about peer-to-peer fundraising as a driver of growth. And all of these statistics were taken from the Classy 2018 State of Modern Philanthropy report, which took a look at more than 2.5 million transactions across the Classy platform to look into trends and insights in giving and donor behavior. So the average peer-to-peer fundraiser raises $559 from 7 donors. And typically of those 7, 4 to 5 will be brand new donors to your organization. The average gift size on peer-to-peer campaigns on Classy is just over $100, $104. In addition, this is going to be a theme we're going to be talking about a lot today, but peer-to-peer campaigns actually attract the youngest donors on the Classy platform. The average age of a donor to a peer-to-peer campaign is in their mid-30s. So if you're looking for a way to engage younger folks in your fundraising and in your supporter community, this can be a great way to do it. As I mentioned before, we see among the highest donation page conversion rates on peer-to-peer campaigns as opposed to any other type of campaign on Classy. And again, this speaks to how powerful that donation ask is when it comes from someone's friend, neighbor, roommate, coworker. And finally, the average peer-to-peer fundraiser typically raises about 4 to 6 times what the average donor would give. So this is a great way, just when you're thinking about the value that you get from each of these interactions, to advance your online fundraising by leaps and bounds. So all of that sounds really great, all of those statistics, but there are more reasons why more and more organizations are opting for peer-to-peer fundraising as a significant proportion of their online fundraising. So what are those benefits that those organizations are seeing? Number one, as we've talked about before, it can be a great channel for new donor acquisition. That average peer-to-peer fundraiser raising $559 from 7 donors, the majority of those donors are brand new to your organization. So it gives you an opportunity to introduce your cause and your mission and who you are and build relationships with brand new donors who may never have come into your orbit otherwise. It also offers a brand new way for supporters to engage with your organization. So many donors, especially younger donors, really don't have the capacity to make big financial gifts, even if they'd like to. However, they are eager to offer their time and their talent to these organizations. And peer-to-peer fundraising offers these younger supporters, these digital natives, a new way to make a big impact. So especially as platforms like peer-to-peer fundraising, especially as platforms like Facebook are popularizing peer-to-peer fundraising, it's really having a moment. And part of that is that peer-to-peer fundraising offers a really personalized experience for your fundraisers in a way that other ways of supporting nonprofit organizations haven't in the past. So this gives supporters an opportunity to connect their own beliefs, values, and identity to your mission. And those personal fundraising pages they create become a vehicle for them to tell your story in their own words. And as we're going to see in the coming slides, the flexibility of peer-to-peer fundraising gives your fundraisers to support you however they want. And then finally, peer-to-peer fundraising, when it's properly and thoughtfully implemented, can create new revenue streams that you can depend on year-round. So we're so familiar with organizations struggling with those peaks and valleys of fundraising. You know, December's amazing. Maybe you have a 5K in April and a gala in September, but other than that, it might be a slow drip for the rest of the year. And that's normal, but peer-to-peer fundraising can offer you some additional stability. This is actually the most productive type of fundraising on the Classy platform year-round, January to December. So many of the campaign types we're going to look at today are evergreen campaigns that you can run all year round without a set campaign end date. So this can give your supporters an opportunity to fundraise for you even when you don't have any specific campaign push running. So one of the best things about peer-to-peer fundraising, and one of the reasons I personally love it so much, is that it's a very flexible method of fundraising. And different organizations implement it in a wide variety of forms based on what fits best for their organization, their cause, and their supporter community. So what we're going to do next is walk through some of the most common angles we see organizations take with peer-to-peer fundraising. And as we walk through these examples, think about whether any of them resonate with you, whether you think any of these types of peer-to-peer could be a good fit for your cause, your fundraising calendar, and your supporter community. So let's go ahead and take a look. One of the most straightforward ways of implementing a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign is a time-bound push. So these campaigns are often implemented in conjunction with an awareness day or an awareness month, or during times of the year when your cause is naturally in the spotlight. You know, for example, a breast cancer organization might host a peer-to-peer campaign during the month of October to tie in with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Or an educational organization might launch a campaign in August or September to coincide with folks going back to school. So this campaign that you see on your screen from an organization called Bloodwater is one of my favorites. And it was implemented in the lead up to World Water Day to challenge supporters of the organization to sign up for the 20-day water challenge. Now, Bloodwater asked supporters to create a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign under this campaign page that you see in front of you and pledge to drink only water for 20 days. Then supporters could donate the money that they would have spent on that $6 latte, that soda, that happy hour drink with their coworkers to their pages to support the organization's Clean Water Project, and also share those campaigns out with their networks. So many organizations will host a time-bound campaign to fund, in addition to what we've already talked about, a specific project or initiative. So think about a capital campaign, a campaign to launch a new program or expand to a new site, campaigns to fund an urgent need so that supporters can respond in a way that's really impactful. There are really a lot of possibilities with this specific type of peer-to-peer fundraising.
Hey, Elizabeth, it's Tony. Thank you so much, and things are going really well. We had a little bit of a rough start with some audio, so I wanted to address that, with the folks that have tuned in, and wanted to just real quickly say that a lot of organizations that I've been working with have really started using peer-to-peer fundraising for their capital campaign. So that's something historically I don't think organizations really tapped into, but now that, once they're reaching the public phase of their campaigns, are really tapping into the peer-to-peer fundraising to help support that. So I just wanted to underscore what you were saying there, and how important it is that folks use that as part of their capital campaign strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that we're seeing develop, certainly as peer-to-peer fundraising becomes more popular, becomes more robust as a tactic. We're seeing people implement it in a lot of really new and exciting ways. And this next tactic I want to talk about, it's not such a new way, but it's something that we're seeing having a real moment in the spotlight. Special day fundraising, we're seeing it's quickly gaining popularity. And this is where you give your supporters the opportunity to fundraise for you by giving up gifts from a special day in their life, and ask their friends and family to contribute to your cause instead. So this type of fundraising may be most popular with birthdays and weddings, but we're also seeing it gain ground with graduations or bar and bat mitzvahs. So this that you see on your screen is a fantastic example of a campaign from the Tim Tebow Foundation that invites supporters to celebrate those with special needs by giving up their own celebration. So one of the things that gets me really excited about this type of peer-to-peer fundraising campaign is the rise of birthday campaigns on Facebook, which I'm sure many of you have seen. Facebook is doing a lot to push their users towards setting up campaigns for their birthdays, from sending them notifications to, in my case, my birthday is actually coming up on Sunday. They've let me know that if I set up a campaign, they'll actually donate $1 towards the organization that I fundraise for. So what this is doing is really raising the profile of this type of fundraising. Many, many people are familiar and comfortable with it now that weren't even just a few short years ago. So if you're looking for a way to break into the peer-to-peer campaign game, this can be an excellent option. So next, we want to talk about fundraising with the board and staff. This is another really common way we see organizations utilizing peer-to-peer as a brand new way to involve their board of directors in fundraising. So individuals who sit on nonprofit boards oftentimes have networks that are well poised to give. So enabling them to make that ask by equipping them with their own peer-to-peer campaign is often very effective. And one thing that's great about this type of campaign too is that you can take advantage of friendly competition in this type of peer-to-peer fundraising. So Classy's peer-to-peer suite has a built-in leaderboard where fundraisers can see in real time who is the leader in terms of the individual gifts notched and the dollars that they've raised. And you can see that here in this really fantastic board fundraising campaign from Eco Agriculture Partners. So depending on the makeup of your board and its culture, this type of campaign has the potential to be one of the highest raising peer-to-peer campaigns. Now, we've also seen organizations run this type of campaigns with organizational staff, fellows, interns, or volunteers. Any group of people close to your organization can be engaged in this way, including your corporate and community partners. So many for-profit employers are looking for more ways to give back to the community and engage their employees in service. But at the same time, they're looking for ways to do this that go beyond just writing a check. So we're seeing many organizations that use Classy hand the reins of a peer-to-peer campaign to a corporate partner that will then engage their employees in fundraising for a nonprofit beneficiary. And we at Classy actually do this every single year on behalf of one of our nonprofit clients. So if you have a strong partner, this can be a great way to really get your brand in front of a lot of people who may not have heard of you before and expand your donor base in that way. So in this example from Oregon Food Bank, their corporate partner, the Oregon Bar Association, is participating in a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign where those individual law firms are competing against each other to see who can fundraise the most on behalf of hunger in Oregon. We've also seen departments of a company fundraise against each other, or individual teams form organically. So this can be a really great way to engage those partners in fundraising in a brand new way. And finally, we wanted to talk about one of the most open-ended types of peer-to-peer fundraising, the third-party event. So if I sign up to peer-to-peer fundraise for an organization, I can support those efforts by hosting my own in-person fundraising event to benefit an organization. And we call these third-party events because they're not hosted by your organization directly. So for example, supporters could host a dinner at their home and invite friends and family to join them with a per plate contribution to their fundraising campaign. And we've seen this model really take off with organizations like the Feed Foundation hosting their Feed Suppers, encouraging folks to come together in small groups in their own homes to talk about this organization, raise money, and learn more. You know, donation-based yoga or workout classes are also popular, but we've seen donation-based concerts, book and clothing swaps, open mics, pasta making classes, and way more. So it's a best practice to set your community up with some fundraising ideas if you do want to pursue this tactic, like this great campaign from the Love Your Brain Foundation does. So if you have an active community, give them the opportunity to support you via a third-party event, and you'll often be surprised by their creativity. So if you're looking at all of this and thinking, peer-to-peer fundraising sounds great, I am all in, I am excited to try it, how do I get started? What we're going to talk about for the rest of this webinar is how you can start a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign at your organization for the first time, and the essential steps that you need to take in order to get one of these campaigns off the ground. And Tony wanted to share some of his insights about what is so important to keep in mind when you are getting ready to launch a campaign like this for the first time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth. So I've been fortunate to launch quite a few peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns here in South Florida. And just, based on my experiences and some of the things that I did wrong is that I realized early on that, not everyone is clearly computer savvy, right? So we have folks that want to do peer-to-peer campaigns, aren't afraid to reach out to their networks, but have trouble really putting together a compelling page. So I found that, offering that customer service to our donors really helped maximize the success of the peer-to-peer campaign. So I would actually go in, create the pages for them, get pictures uploaded. It was pretty time consuming initially, but it's what those donors needed in order to get the peer-to-peer campaign off the ground. So customer service was really important for the success of the campaigns that I worked on, making sure that I provided as much support as possible to the folks participating in the campaign, and then making sure that I followed up every week in a group email to everyone that was participating in the peer-to-peer campaign. Specifically, I'm talking about mass market events like walkathons or bikeathons, right? So sending out, I think it was every Friday, I would send out an email to everyone participating in the walkathon peer-to-peer, just kind of sharing what other folks had done to boost giving and just giving them tips and just continually, having an opportunity to thank them for participating in the campaign. So that's just some of my experiences with peer-to-peer.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that is so true and resonates really strongly with me, because one of the most important things that I want to stress is that peer-to-peer fundraising, it's not set it and forget it. It's not a silver bullet. Tony, you're absolutely right. It does take work to manage a peer-to-peer program, field questions from your fundraisers, troubleshoot, reach out with coaching content, etc. But one of the things that we want to emphasize is ways that you can work smarter, because we know you're nonprofit professionals, you don't have too much extra time, you don't have too many extra resources. So we want to really encourage you to think about peer-to-peer in a way that is low effort to high impact to the degree possible. So let's go ahead and dive in. So our biggest piece of advice, if you are among the respondents that said you've not tried peer-to-peer fundraising before, but you are interested in implementing it, is to start small. We don't want you to try to boil the ocean and run a huge campaign with 200 fundraisers right away. It's much better, and you are going to see much more success by having 5 to 10 committed, bought-in fundraisers in a first attempt at peer-to-peer. Because when you're starting this type of campaign, getting a true partnership with those early fundraisers is critical. These are the supporters who are going to be giving you feedback on your campaign, the process of creating your fundraising pages, any resource that you give them. So choosing supporters that you know you can depend on for feedback will get you a long way. And then before you go any further, it's very important to have a very clear idea of what you are trying to accomplish with a peer-to-peer campaign, especially among those of you who are going to be running this for the first time. So this should include both internal goals. For example, we want to have 10 active fundraisers who each raise at least $500, and we want to gain 30 new donors, and an external goal that you communicate to your fundraisers and to the public. For example, we want to raise $5,000 to expand our programming to a new site for 2019. Then, once you have a really clear idea of what those goals are, you can proceed with actually planning your campaign. So what is the story that we want to tell about that goal? When will the campaign run and for how long? How will you communicate about the campaign and through what channels and to what audiences? Once you've answered these questions, you can get started with building your campaign page and the most important part, which is fundraiser recruitment. And fundraiser recruitment is one area that we wanted to pause on before we move forward and give special attention to this topic, because this is something that we often hear organizations having a lot of questions about. Now, we hear from a lot of organizations that they aren't sure who those first fundraisers should be, and we recommend starting with those folks who are the absolute closest to your organization. So oftentimes this can mean starting with your board members, but other popular choices are your committed volunteers, your longtime reliable donors, maybe monthly donors, or your social media evangelists, anyone who you know is excited about your cause and will be a great ambassador for it. So as with any ask, a face-to-face conversation is the most effective when you're starting a campaign about peer-to-peer fundraising, but if not, a personal email or a personal phone call will suffice as well. Again, keyword personal. Explain to your supporters that you are approaching them because they are one of your strongest, closest supporters that you know you can depend on, and that their involvement is critical to getting your peer-to-peer initiative started. And when you're having that conversation, make sure to emphasize that you will be there as their partner to support them as they donate their time to you as a peer-to-peer fundraiser. And finally, make sure that that ask is tied to the mission of your organization. This is why they're supporting you, and this is the cause that their fundraising dollars will be supporting. So make sure that that mission is central to the ask, central to the conversation. And then finally, we mentioned this before, but emphasize the support that they will get from you as they fundraise. You are a professional fundraiser, but your peer-to-peer participants are not. So in order for them to feel really confident about going out there and asking their friends and family for money, which, let's face it, it's not the easiest thing to do, you want to emphasize that you are going to be there with them every step of the way, give them the tips and tricks and resources that they need to be successful. And at the end of this presentation, we've actually pulled together some of my personal favorite resources for peer-to-peer fundraisers for you. So you already have a great starting point in terms of making sure that those fundraisers feel supported and ready to get out there and crush their goals. So once you have your fundraisers recruited, you are ready now to kickstart your campaign. So as Tony mentioned earlier, sometimes people aren't too tech savvy or they might have questions. That's why we found it really effective to get all of your fundraisers together to set up their fundraising pages. This is also a really great opportunity for you to get the energy up and express your gratitude for their support. You'll also have the opportunity to answer any questions right away and make sure the momentum is maintained for your launch, in addition to just helping your fundraisers get to know each other. These are your absolute most dedicated supporters, so getting them all in one room is really special.
That is an awesome idea.
Mm-hmm. And then at the beginning of the campaign, it's so important for you to provide fundraising tips and tricks, fundraising how-to resources, and best practices. As I mentioned before, sometimes supporters can be intimidated by peer-to-peer fundraising, and they're not sure how they should get started. So providing those quick tips and how-tos can help your fundraisers get their campaigns off the ground quickly. And again, look out at the end of this presentation for those links to some of my favorite resources that you can distribute to your fundraisers to help them succeed. So you've got your fundraisers recruited, they have got campaign pages, they are armed with best practices, and they are out there in the world making that ask of their networks. So now what it's really important to do during the campaign is making sure that your fundraisers feel supported. As Tony said, peer-to-peer is not set it and forget it, and a successful peer-to-peer fundraising campaign does require some degree of active management, whether that's reviewing reports and tracking progress, making yourself available to answer questions from your fundraisers, or providing that motivation and support for your fundraisers who are having a harder time getting their campaigns off the ground. However, you don't have to be the only avenue of support for your fundraisers. So while you should, of course, offer yourself up as a resource, we also see a lot of organizations encouraging their fundraisers to work together as a community. They can support each other with tips and success stories, share fundraising ideas. And we've seen many organizations create online spaces for their fundraisers to have those conversations with each other. A Facebook group, for example, is a really easy, low effort idea that you can implement to give your fundraisers that forum. And overall, it's very important that you're staying in communication with your fundraisers throughout the campaign. Many organizations, like the organizations that Tony worked on peer-to-peer campaigns with, will choose to send a weekly recap email to fundraisers, sharing those fundraising totals and progress from the last week, shouting out their weekly top fundraisers, which is a great engagement opportunity as well to give them that warm fuzzy, and sharing news and resources about the campaigns. So in addition to fundraising tips and tricks, you can also share things like templates for emails and social posts that your fundraisers can use to reach out to their contacts with, or assets for them to use on social media. These are things that your team can spin up relatively quickly that will make a huge difference for your fundraisers. And I just wanted to quickly plug one of my absolute favorite tools for creating these kinds of assets, which is called Canva. Some of you may already be familiar with it. I have talked to so many nonprofit professionals that rely on Canva. It's a great free online tool that you can use to create really professional looking graphics for email and social. That can be a real lifesaver during a campaign like this. So on the same topic of campaign management, it's so important for you to be monitoring your campaign health and progress. Of course, this isn't news to any of you who have run an online or even offline campaign before, but there are a few metrics and data points that are unique to peer-to-peer campaigns that we wanted to shout out in particular. For example, you'll want to keep a close eye on the number of fundraisers who haven't yet started collecting gifts versus those who have not raised any funds yet. Inactive fundraisers, unfortunately, are a fact of life of a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. Maybe someone will set up their fundraising campaign page because they are all jazzed, and then life happens and the next week they just haven't gotten around to it yet. Again, that will happen, but that's where you come in with that personal email, that personal motivation, and that personal coaching that can help them get off the ground. In addition, you'll want to keep an eye on the average dollars raised and average number of gifts per fundraiser, because these are really important metrics for your overall campaign as well. And then finally, we want to encourage you to pay special attention to one other group other than that group of non-transacting fundraisers that we talked about earlier. And those are going to be your rock star fundraisers. Every campaign is going to have one of these. They are hot out of the gates. They are utilizing all of your best practices and all of your resources, and they are crushing it. Now, these are the fundraisers that are going to raise double their goal with just a little extra motivation, coaching, and gratitude from your team. So make sure that you're keeping an eye not only on those people who haven't yet started to become fundraising, but those folks who are real leaders. And one of the ways that you encourage fundraisers to help crush their goals is incentives. Of course, this is a great way to engage and motivate supporters, not only to make a donation, as I'm sure many of you have used incentives in the past, but also to fundraise to a certain level in that peer-to-peer campaign. Now, when organizations hear incentive, a lot of people automatically think of the branded t-shirt, the branded coffee mug, the license plate frame, and things like that. Now, branded swag items can be great incentives, and they're very popular for a reason, but we also want to encourage you to think outside the box. Make it something that's relevant to your mission or something that your supporters care about. So some organizations find it more impactful to offer incentives that are experiences rather than swag items. For example, a behind the scenes tour of your facility or look into your programs if that's appropriate for what your organization does, maybe lunch with your executive director. You can get even more creative than that. I've seen a humane society offer the incentive to name a litter of puppies or kittens to a top fundraiser, which is just so much fun. But above all, make sure that the incentives you're offering are a good fit for who is going to be fundraising. You know your supporter community best. You know what will resonate with them. So trust your gut on that. But one organization we work with here at Classy runs a large-scale peer-to-peer fundraising campaign every year that's targeted towards college students. And their prize for the top individual fundraiser nationwide was a pair of passes to a summer music festival. So this is something that, again, would really, really resonate with those folks who are doing the fundraising. That being said, we want to emphasize it is not necessary to spend much or any money at all on this. Again, it's so much more important that the incentive be a good fit for your fundraiser community rather than being something expensive. And let's face it, donors are concerned about overhead. They don't necessarily want you to be offering something super extravagant. So make sure it's something that is connected with your mission and is going to resonate with people if this is something that you are going to choose to do. So it's the end of your campaign, your incentives have landed, your fundraisers have fundraised, and you are sitting at your goal or at the end of your campaign. So what do you do now? So of course, it's so important, first and foremost, to say thank you, thank you, thank you. So not only should you say a personalized thank you to everyone who fundraised, ideally a personal note, a card, they have given their time and talents and their networks. It shouldn't just be an email. You should also give special thought to thanking the donors who came in the door to your organization for the first time throughout the campaign. So if Jane fundraised for you and Joe donated to her campaign, but he's brand new to your organization, this is your opportunity to make a great first impression on him and begin to steward Joe for future gifts. Additionally, it's a best practice at the end of your campaign to send out a quick survey to your peer-to-peer fundraisers asking for their feedback on the experience. This is even more important if this is a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign that you've ran for the first time. This is a great opportunity for you to learn directly from your fundraisers what worked well in the campaign and get actionable insights about what you can do to make your campaigns more successful in the future. Maybe they thought the time frame offered for your campaign was too tight and they feel like they could have done a lot more if they had 2 weeks. Maybe the resources that you provided were really, really useful, but a lot of fundraisers didn't know that they were there. These are the things that you can learn by talking directly to your fundraisers that'll help make your second and third and fourth peer-to-peer fundraising campaign that much more successful. And on that note, similar to any other type of campaign that you might run, peer-to-peer or not, online or offline, you should host a campaign retrospective with your team after the conclusion of the campaign. This is your opportunity to review the success of your fundraiser recruitment, your communications, how any emails or social posts performed, and of course, to review your fundraising totals, your metrics like average raised per fundraiser, total number of active fundraisers, total number of new donors versus the goals you set before you started. You can also review the results of your fundraiser survey at this time and discuss steps to make your next peer-to-peer campaign even more successful than the first.
And Elizabeth, again, I love that. The surveys that was not something that I did in the early stages of my fundraising career using peer-to-peer, and it really would have taken a lot of the guesswork out of my future planning had I done that. So that's a really great tip.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to implement a survey, of course, it's important to keep it pretty short and pretty high level and not ask people to complete something super in depth. But even just a couple of questions can give you really valuable information on why people ended up performing really well, or on the flip side, why they didn't. And then you can just use that to perform better in the future. So we just wanted to land before we take your questions, and please do take a moment to, if you have a question, send it in. We're really excited to hear from you. Pause on some key takeaways. So peer-to-peer fundraising can be a great addition to any year-round fundraising strategy. And while peer-to-peer fundraising requires planning and hard work, of course, it also offers unique benefits to your organizations and your supporters that other types of online fundraising, other campaign types, don't offer in the same way. And then finally, what I want to say is peer-to-peer fundraising is one of the most flexible types of fundraising out there. And the diversity of successful peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns that I've personally seen in my role at Classy is equal to the numbers of organizations that have run them. There is no one right way to be successful with peer-to-peer, and there is a world of opportunity. So if you've looked at peer-to-peer campaigns before and said, that's not a good fit for us, or there's no way we could pull that off, don't be so sure. There are a wide variety of ways to be successful with this type of fundraising, and there's a world of opportunity. So we're so excited to see what you do. And to help you start to think about how to get there, we've put together a handout for you that'll walk you through thinking about your organization, your cause, your programs, your supporter community, and how you can take that and put it into a peer-to-peer fundraising program that'll be successful, whether it's the first time you've run something like this or you've run many before. And as you're going through that planning stage, please make sure as well to review these resources that we've included here for you. We've got a fantastic ebook that'll walk you through every single step of setting up a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. One of my personal favorite resources, which is a customizable fundraising tip sheet. This is in Word format, so you can drop your organization's logo in, your name, your contact information, any information that's going to be important for your peer-to-peer fundraisers to have. And it also has some great high impact tips on there. And then I've also included a link to the peer-to-peer fundraising knowledge base that lives on the Classy blog. So this is going to cover everything from planning to recruitment to design to incentives to fundraiser follow-up, really anything having to do with peer-to-peer fundraising. We've got some great knowledge on there for you, and we really encourage you all to take advantage of it. Okay. And with that, we would love to move on to the Q&A portion of our webinar. So if you have a question about anything that we discussed today, anything that we didn't discuss today that you'd like to get Tony or myself's take on, we're super excited to open it up to the audience at this time.
Excellent. Great. Elizabeth, thank you. That was a lot of really good information. And so like you said, we want to go ahead and answer any questions that our attendees have. So please submit those questions or comments that you have via the chat box in your GoToWebinar control panel. Meanwhile, we had a few questions that have come in, so let's get started with those. Early on in the presentation, you mentioned a conversion rate, Elizabeth, and someone was asking, what is a conversion rate?
Oh, that's a great question, and apologies for not going into that deeper earlier. So when we talk about a conversion rate, we're talking about the percentage of the number of people who land on a donation page versus the number of people that actually go through and make that gift. And conversion rate can sometimes refer to different actions depending on the type of action that you're wanting someone to take. So the conversion rate on a donation page would refer to someone making a donation. The conversion rate on, an event page might refer to someone purchasing a ticket, but it really relates to how often does someone complete that desired action on a given fundraising campaign page. And again, we see the rate of people actually completing that donation to be so high on peer-to-peer fundraising because it is their sister asking them, it is their roommate asking them, it is their significant other asking them, and that type of thing carries a lot of weight for people. That's a great question.
Super, and a great answer, thank you. someone else said, you've used a lot of great terms today that I was unfamiliar with, one like digital natives. What's a digital native?
Oh, great question. So when we say digital native or, digital generation or anything like that, we're really referring to that younger group of people. Some people might call them millennials that have really grown up online, grown up with social media, grown up being very familiar with doing things online. And that extends to fundraising, which is why we're seeing so many members of the younger generation really excited and bought in about peer-to-peer fundraising, whereas people, like you said, Tony, might not be as tech savvy. We're not seeing that with younger people. In fact, there was a survey done, which I believe I alluded to earlier, that something like 87% of millennials and Gen Z think people under the age of about 35 would be interested in supporting an organization that they cared about through peer-to-peer.
Great. Another question from one of our attendees. What is your recommendation in terms of timeline for a campaign? 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for a time-bound campaign, a campaign that you're not running all year, such as a birthday fundraising campaign that's going to run basically in perpetuity, we typically advise no fewer than 4 weeks for a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, and typically no more than 12. And these are approximate values that may shift a little bit depending on your organization, your fundraising calendar. But the reason why we lay out these approximate bounds are because any less than 4 weeks, your fundraisers are typically not really going to have the time they need to go out and make several different rounds of asks, to go back to people and maybe ask for a gift if they said, no, talk to me next week. So any lower than 4 weeks typically ends up being a little rushed. And if you go on the higher end, more than 10 or 12 weeks, we typically see organizations struggling with the campaign not really being at the top of supporters' minds for 12 weeks, or dealing with that mid-campaign slump, or just frankly finding it hard to manage from a communications and reporting and administrative standpoint, a campaign that takes that long. So we'd say about 2 months tends to be the sweet spot, but it depends on a lot of factors.
Great. Could you organize
so
your peer-to-peer a built-in support system?
I'm sorry, Tony, would you mind repeating that? I think we had some garbled sound.
Oh, sure, of course. Could you organize your peer-to-peer into teams so that there is a built-in support system?
That's an excellent question. You absolutely can do that. In fact, we recommend it as a best practice if you have a large enough campaign with enough fundraisers. So there are a lot of different ways that we see organizations using teams in their peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns to not only support their fundraisers, but often support their fundraising by giving those folks that extra sense of friendly competition. So whether that's the accounting team competing against the marketing team in a workplace fundraiser, or whether it's, each board member leading a team in a fundraising competition, there are a lot of different ways that you can incorporate teams to put that extra layer into your peer-to-peer fundraising campaign.
Great. And let's see, there was one more question that I wanted to get in. I'm going through them. We've got lots of really good questions. Here it is. So this is really interesting. How will they make the donation? Do we just create a link for them to go to our website to make the donation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're using a platform such as Classy or any other platform that has a peer-to-peer fundraising capability, each fundraiser will have their own individual donation page that they can send supporters to make that gift on. So it'll have, they will have a personalized link that they can send folks to, but depending on your technical setup, it might look a little different. But typically we would recommend any organization running a campaign of this type to have a platform of some kind, whether a low-cost platform or something more robust, to manage the campaign.
Excellent. One of our attendees was saying, thank you so much for this great information. They're launching their peer-to-peer campaign next week.
That's so exciting. Well, we really hope that you take a look at some of the resources that we've included and that they're helpful to you. But congratulations. Exciting.
And then just one last question, because again, this is a really good one, and then we'll move on. I know I keep saying that, but these are really good questions. So regarding timeline, how much time to prep for a campaign and materials, both in terms of lead time and amount of hours?
So I would say that really depends on the complexity of the campaign that you are getting ready to run. If it is just going to be a simple time-bound push for peer-to-peer, it can be, as few as a couple of weeks lead time. Again, I want to keep emphasizing the flexibility of this type of fundraising. If you want to have a fully built out campaign with, a campaign theme, a campaign brand, branded assets, a series of branded emails, a series of blog posts, those things are all best practices, but obviously it's really going to push out your lead time and your prep time. What we really want to encourage you is to think about what are those things that are most important for your supporter community in terms of getting the campaign set up. So then you can adjust that based on your fundraising calendar and the resources that you have.
Wonderful, thank you. You might hear a little bit of clicking here. I'm just checking in with some of our folks. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your incredible questions, and Elizabeth, great answers. It's always a lot of fun when our attendees get really engaged in a topic and ask such great questions. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and close out the webinar. So please, we want to keep this conversation going. If you have additional questions, please let us know on social media. Tag us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter using the hashtag #SIPWebinar. And also, if you'd like to contact Elizabeth, her contact information is available to you on the screen. You will also receive this information when you get the slide deck in a follow-up email in the next few days. So Elizabeth, what is the most important takeaway for our webinar participants?
Yep. I would say the most important thing to do with peer-to-peer fundraising, especially for the first time, is to take the plunge. This is such a growing area of fundraising. It's such a growing area of opportunity that if you haven't made this part of your strategy up until now, absolutely start to think about how you can pilot a peer-to-peer fundraising program. If you're in a situation where you don't really have the resources for peer-to-peer fundraising, you don't really have a lot of time, or maybe you don't really have a lot of organizational support and buy-in, launching a pilot program focusing really well on a very small number of fundraisers, a very contained goal, a very small scope, can help you get that proof of concept that you might need to get some additional buy-in behind peer-to-peer, but it's not going to happen if you don't take that plunge. So that's the biggest thing that I would say.
Well, great. Well, thank you again. I mean, just a lot of really good information and a lot of stuff that folks can start using right away within their organizations. So have we left you wanting more? It's here. The second edition of our cause selling guide to relationship-driven fundraising is now available. So go to causeselling.org to learn more about the second edition of our cause selling book. And then we encourage you to join us for our next webinar on June 19th as part of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series, Prospecting for Diverse Major Donors with the one and only Armando. So learn about and avoid bias to diversify your fundraising network. Make sure you register today. And again, a big thank you to Elizabeth, Classy.org, and our audience for your time and participation. To help us continue to improve our monthly webinar series and ensure we are providing value to our audience, please take a few minutes to complete our survey. In closing, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for all that you do to better the communities in which we live, work, and play. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on June 19th.